Now, Business Unity South Africa has recently adopted guiding principles to address corruption and embed integrity within business. These include a zero-tolerance approach with legal and visible consequences for companies and individuals found to be involved in corruption. For more on this, I'm joined by BUSA CEO Tanya Cohen. Thanks so much for your time, Tanya. Perhaps the first question that people will be asking is, why are these principles only being adopted now?
I think we were seeing increased incidences and reports of corruption coming through, and I think with the Gupta leaks and all the activity around that, we looked at ourselves and realized we really have to do something substantial to give guidance to our members, but also obviously for business to address the scourge of corruption.
When we hear the word corruption, often it's limited in people's minds to an office or a big corporate. If you could just break down to me how it affects perhaps me as an ordinary South African, other South Africans who are watching.
Well, I think first of all, what corruption does is that it takes money out of the fiscus. So money that is intended from the public budget that's meant to go into very, very valuable social services, social transfers to the poor, as well as into infrastructure development. So essentially it's stealing from the economy what we need to actually grow and make the economy prosperous and make sure that society develops in the way that we want it to.
The Vice President of BUSA was saying that there's often a tendency to not shout out private sector corruption as much as public sector corruption. Does there need to be a differentiation between public sector and private sector? And just talk us through that.
Well, I think one of the things we've recognized is that we certainly can be very outspoken about our own conduct in terms of corruption, and that where it takes place in the private sector, we need to really act decisively. And I think the one difference in terms of the public sector is that what the public sector is dealing with is public funds. It's essentially our taxpayers' money that is being leaked through corruption. So to some extent there is a higher level of accountability with the public sector, but we can do more about our conduct in the private sector.
Big story that's been making news is KPMG, the scandal around that. Take us through your thoughts as BUSA on that, and then also there was a call that now managers and people who are involved in private companies who see corruption happening under their watch should be criminally charged.
Well, I think first of all we think that KPMG acted too late, and that their actions haven't been sufficient given the gravity of the conduct that has alleged to have taken place. But having said that, we've seen more recently that they are taking action, they are investigating. We've seen the resignation of some of the senior managers. But what we think they need to do is be absolutely transparent about what they're doing. We think that they need to ensure that there are consequences, internal consequences in terms of how the business deals with it itself, what are the consequences for those individuals that are found to be involved, as well as those that had oversight and should have actually applied a greater level of scrutiny. And if people are found to be guilty, there must be criminal sanctions, and we think that there must be very harsh criminal sanctions, because if we don't start there, where are we going to send the message that corruption must stop?
You spoke about higher level of accountability needed for our public funds and state funds. Bodies such as yourself and perhaps BLSA, is there a need to get involved when you see public sector corruption? Because business doesn't work in a silo and government doesn't work in a silo. They're interconnected and need each other to move this country forward.
I think that it's a very important role that we are now required to make, and that is what we're discussing with our members, including BLSA, is how do we, as the custodians and the glue that fits the private sector together, bring a level of reason and also activism to this problem, because we can't stay silent. It is damaging our economy. It is damaging the social prospects for our society, and we all need to step up. I think where organized business has an advantage is that it works across businesses, so it doesn't necessarily have involvement in individual transactions and individual acts of corruption. So we do have an opportunity there to really take leadership and to also work with our members to do everything that we can to address corruption.